for a week. They claimed it. They said, "Do you have a boss at work?" I go, "I do." I go, "That's usually the."
Mayor, you may proceed.
Thank you. It is Monday, January 10th, 2022. This is our third public meeting of the day. This is a virtual special budget workshop meeting of the commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach. Welcome, everybody. I want to call this meeting to order at 2:02 p.m. I'd like to take a roll call. Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Stranowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Well, and I'd like to also note those in attendance from the city staff include Chief Banks of the police department, Evan Miller, project superintendent, Bert Dukes, financial director, Sharon Lynn, city manager, Kevin Williams, public works supervisor. I believe Lynn Cohen is here as a communication specialist. Captain Giles of the Beach Patrol, I believe, is here. And we've got Max Brandt and Joe, a trifecta from the IT department. Welcome, everybody. I'd also like to thank all those that are watching virtually. As you know, we are, out of an abundance of caution, conducting all our meetings virtually, and that includes excluding the public from the meeting room. As you can see, most of us are spread farther out today than normal. Also like to thank the pre-registered speaker, singular, Walter Brittingham. We've got you registered to speak, and we'll call on you at the appropriate times. Thank you for attending and for your feedback. I'd like to remind everybody that support documents, when available, are available on the city portal. Seek out the agenda and you'll find it. We've got the budget there, but also I'd like to draw your attention, especially to support document number 2, which has the budget calendar on there, as many as I think maybe 6 possible meetings on the budget. And it has their focuses, what will be focused on at each meeting. So take a look at that. With that, again, this special meeting is a budget meeting, budget number 1. And I'd like to hand it over to City Manager Sharon Lynn, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Very honored to present the City of Rehoboth Beach fiscal year budget for the fiscal year 2023. We have a balanced budget to discuss with you today. We have a total operating budget of $29,393,194. That includes a $6,450,000 capital improvement plan. We have revenue amounts that are projected, as we do every year, conservatively, and all expenses have been discussed with department heads, excuse me, at the minimum amount to keep each department running and operational. Personnel costs are slightly increased to remain competitive and to align with the city's cost analysis and compensation and study that we undertook about 4 years ago. Projections for the city's union employees remain flat, as I am still negotiating with the union representatives as we go into this meeting. I know that all the commissioners, with the exception of Commissioner Bennett, have been in these budget meetings before. What I like to do, and hopefully all you commissioners have had the opportunity to review at least the highlights of the budget and have the opportunity to ask questions from most of the department heads, I'll say, who you're going to see in the next 3 meetings or so, in addition to those we have scheduled for various entities where the city makes contributions. And I'll say the focal point of today includes the administration budget, the communications expenses, Police Department 9/11 dispatch budget, and we'll touch on the capital outlays. I'd really like to save that, but of course, some of them are tied into some departments are tied into the CIP, so they'll be presenting those as they come up today. Also, the beach patrol will be included under the police department budget. So we do have this broken down for you. It's slightly different. It's something that you've seen every month, prepared by the Director of Municipal Finance, Mr. Dukes, who's present at this meeting. On the first page, you have a description and an index summary of all the departments. And then as we refer to them, you can look at the pages, the numbered pages, and hopefully that will make it a little easier for you. As I said, the CIP capital improvement plan is laid out in a way that's tied, as you know, to each department that is represented in the CIP, and those departments as they come up, as they're announced today and in future meetings, we'll talk about their CIP expenses. Any questions as we start here from the commissioners? Just general questions. Okay. I do want to say that I usually go into the staffing expenses and any new levels of staffing. The one staffing level that I have identified in this budget is the position of Assistant City Manager. And I've identified Evan Miller as a potential future local government manager. When I first met Evan over 5 years ago, I knew that he would someday be a leader in this profession. And as a local government fellow, when I first got to meet Evan and shared him with the city of Milford, he immediately excelled in his assignments. Some commissioners seated today may even recall that I gave Evan the task after his first year as local government fellow. I gave him the task of implementing the new rollout of the new efficient T2 Flex technology meter system that was beginning the summer of 2019. We added approximately 48 meters, Loop Cosmo pay stations, and LPR virtual technology for vehicles. Evan was very instrumental in this first phase of rolling out the new meters. He quickly took the reins and he gained exposure to all aspects of the implementation while he assisted generally in teaching the parking enforcement officers how to operate the new meters and the software technology that went along with that. Since that time, Evan has worked with all of you, the elected officials, gaining your trust, many department heads as he advanced and he was exposed to different aspects of the job. He's played a primary role in the adoption of the 5-year CIP and in laying out the CIP, the document in itself, as well as in the preparation of the budget. He's gained a tremendous knowledge in construction management in his present role for the past few years as projects manager and coordinating many of the projects that we have ongoing. Evan has participated in projects that have helped him grow professionally as he managed decisions and found meaningful ways to negotiate legal issues and development opportunities. This is a vital role for any any professional in city government, and then one that will continue to show its importance in many ways for the city of Rehoboth Beach. A very key component in my job as a professional city manager has always been to mentor the next up and coming generation. Working here in the city of Rehoboth Beach during the past 8 years has meant a great deal to me in my professional career, and one where I have fulfilled my own desire to see the next generation succeed with Mr. Miller here on board. I'm so proud of Evan and don't want him to miss out on any greater opportunities in his young career. He is ready to advance to the next level of professional management, and I support Evan in every direction to fulfill the position of Assistant City Manager. I've allocated funds in the administration budget to further identify this position with a future meeting of the Personnel Committee, and I sincerely hope that you would support this decision in furthering Evan's career. So that's one piece, a major piece of the personnel that I usually outline as new and different, if you will. We don't have any other major department heads that are needed. We're all intact. We are continuing our efforts. They are currently underway for seasonal positions. We're doing that by way of advertising. We have some possible future blocks of just doing some video clips with news outfits, and we continue to, the chief specifically can talk to you later on about how he continues to solicit seasonal employees through meetings with colleges and universities. Of course, most are virtual these days. So with that, if there are no general questions from the commissioners, we can get right into the budget itself. And I would ask the chief if I assume the chief's online here.
Sharon, we've got a few hands up here, including mine. So we go Stan, Jay, Ed, and Susan. I'm not sure I heard clearly. By the way, congratulations, Evan. And I wish we could see your face to see if you were smiling or not during all that. So I hope you are, that's a thumbs up to you. Congratulations. I think there can't be a better candidate. I've enjoyed working with you. You're very intelligent, and we'll have a lot positive to contribute to this. Sharon, I didn't understand your mention about the Personnel Committee. Are you taking his recommendation to the Personnel Committee?
I'm asking Commissioner Gossett to convene a meeting of the Personnel Committee so I can further discuss this with the Personnel Committee. Of course, if Commissioner Gossett and you mayor see fit to do that.
I guess I'm questioning the intent of that or the need to do that. The Personnel Committee is made up by commissioners, and we commissioners form the Budget Committee, if you will. I just don't see what the need is, but maybe Patrick can articulate what the need is.
I think that the aspect of the Personnel Committee interaction with that is just to review and define the job description that the city manager's prepared, just to understand it better, as this is a new position within the city, and how that would those roles and responsibilities would work with other department heads, and just to understand the flow of authority, actually.
Okay, I understand that, but not going as far as the Personnel Committee making a recommendation on whether to hire him as assistant city manager or not.
No, that is not our role. I mean, the city manager is the chief operating officer, and those decisions are on hiring and firing are strictly with the chief operating officer. But as conversations with the city manager is that just developing and reviewing the job description of that position, since it's a new position to the organization, just understand it, and its roles and responsibilities and how it relates to other departments in their interactions.
Very good. You have a timeline for meeting? Is that going to be done before our next budget meeting, do you think, or?
Probably within the next 2 weeks. It really depends on the city manager's schedule and my schedule, but within the next 2 weeks, certainly.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. With that, I forget the sequencing. I think it was Jay Legree and then Ed Chernowski and then Susan. Commissioner Legree?
Patrick asked the questions that I was going to ask. It was primarily where it all fits in and where it appears in the chain of command and how that responsibilities go. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Chernowski?
Yeah, thank you. And congratulations to Evan. I echo everything that Sharon said. Sharon, is this going to be, is it your intent that Evan's current position would be replaced, or this would all kind of roll up into one new position? The new responsibilities in addition to his existing responsibilities?
I think at this point, the position does not, the projects coordinator position is not to be replaced. Evan will continue to assist in that development, but also take on certainly additional duties in leadership and commanding different departments. So it's not intended to be replaced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
I never had my hand up, so I don't know what you're looking at.
I thought you were waving. Maybe you were playing
No,
the
no.
screen. So. All right. If there's no further commissioner comments, back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also just clarify that way before my time in the city, there was a position of assistant city manager. I've heard just brief comments about that. There was no formal, and there is no formal job description that I'm aware of for that. So for all intents and purposes, at least in my administration, that's a new position.
Just point of clarification there, city manager. And I know it's semantics, but it was how it was interpreted. And that's why I think it's important for us to review the job description. That earlier position was an assistant to the city manager, as opposed to assistant city manager. And I know that's very, kind of in the weeds, but it turned, the role of that position was not executed in the way it was meant to be. So I think that's very important that you and I have had these discussions, and we'll continue with the full personnel committee to outline the roles and responsibilities of this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, there's been different iterations of the title, assistant city manager, assistant to the city manager, administrative assistant to the city manager, as I've seen in my own career. So that's an important distinction to make. My intent with the assistant city manager position is one of professional design through the ICMA standards of professional government. So Evan fits that bill, and that's where we'll be headed. Chief Banks, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Who's there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So if we could start with you, Chief, and go through your budget and explain to the commissioners, basically outline for them what, the high points of that, and then we'll go to your 911 dispatch level, and then
Yes. Thank you, Sharon.
Referencing page numbers would be very helpful.
Okay.
25.
Okay. Currently under the police department, we have 19 police officers, including myself, along with 2 support staff. We see no changes in the police staffing levels coming up. Just a quick overview I'm giving. We currently are, as Sharon has already mentioned, in collective bargaining negotiations with the police officers, so there'll be some unknowns about the salaries and benefits that we're working on. The current contract ends end of March of this year. We have budgeted for 26 seasonal cadets. We have raised the starting salaries this year to $17 from $14.57 to be to solicit more applications and to be competitive, I've reached out to some neighboring towns, and that's exactly what they're doing. To kind of reemphasize, one of the biggest issues we continue to have, and I don't see it changing that much this year, is with the housing. A lot of applicants that we're seeing and talking to is already concerned about housing and where they could stay. So I think that's going to continue to be an issue. With that being said, we've really worked hard this off-season. We've come up with new brochures. As city manager has mentioned already, we're going to be doing some commercials and news outreach. I've got officers going out of state to Maryland, Pennsylvania. Our next round of is 5 more colleges next week, and then the following week after that too. So we did put in this budget to sit there and help out with recruiting and travel that we haven't necessarily done in the past to help solicit these seasonal cadet officers. And that's going to be the same way with our lifeguards too when we get into that. And I can answer any additional questions on the cadet program that you may have. Items that have gone up this past year, but we tried to still balance the budget and take away in other areas, is cardiokinetics. What that is our wellness and fitness program for the officers. We believe in that, in the mental health, and to make sure they're physically fit to do their job. So every year, my officers go and get complete physicals, and that's blood work and everything like that to make sure they're in good shape. Because of that, it has gone up with some medical things this year, so that budget's slightly gone up in that line item. The other thing that's gone up this year is for our ammunition for our firearms training recertifications. We have to do that by law 3 times a year. We actually do an extra one for us just to make sure we're above and beyond that criteria. And also we add a proficiency on that. So ammunition's gone up a little bit this year. But again, we've all countered that by doing away with some other areas, cutting back. Body camera and fleet cameras, the maintenance and the cloud storage this year is going to go up quite significantly. As you know, by law, we're all required, the police officers have body cameras on at all times. And also, and we've been doing that for 5 years now. It's just more and more storage is needed, so the cloud storage has gone up. What this budget does not reflect, though, is the body cameras and associated costs for the seasonal cadets, which we are anticipating funding from the state. So we were asked not to put that in our budget. Advised if we did put that in there now, we could not get reimbursed from the state. So right now that is not included, but may have to be looked at a later date if that doesn't come through the funding. As always, we will continue to seek out additional grant funding opportunities. And as far as capital improvement, we've had 0 requests for that. I can go through the budget if you need to be, but I can tell you it is balanced. It's really, there's no changes from last year except for the seasonal cadet salaries and the unknown salaries for the full-time officers while we're negotiating. We're been able to keep and maintain the budget that we've had, and I don't see any serious deficiencies or any needs to change that for this upcoming year.
Chief, I will add that I commend you for that. You're the first police chief that I've worked with in my career who has not increased your expenses in the departmental budget. Not only this year, but I know that you take great pride in keeping an eye on your budget and making sure that you don't go over. So I'm very pleased with that, and I thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the mayor, commissioners?
We've got Commissioner Legree and then Commissioner Gossett. Commissioner Legree, unmute yourself.
Chief, I know you talked about, first of all, I'm assuming the 25 or the cadets are not covered by union contract or pay scale. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you review one more time how much you raised. You raised the basic hourly pay from what, 15 to 17.50? I can't remember exactly.
I'm sorry, $14.57 and increased it to $17. And that seems to be competitive from what we reached out to other towns about. Some are giving a little bit more, but I think that's very competitive.
Here's my question. Did you folks by any chance talk about some kind of a housing allowance or some kind of a boost to let these kids be better able to afford living in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware?
We have discussed it. I have discussed it with the city manager and others in the past. And not sure I got a feed as far as bonuses if they stay on at the end of the year or to help offset cost. I know we had looked at it one time before we did the sale of the house last year in town here for the city and see if some of the profits could be taken to help offset this. I mean, this is an ongoing issue. I know we're talking about the cadets right now, but for the lifeguards as well as any seasonal employees for other departments too. So continues to be an issue. So it was brought up, but I don't think there was much movement on that. But that is we have reached out to Ocean City and other places, and they do campaigns like friends of the department, and if they have a room available to, somebody that lives in town may offer up a room and, and just pay them directly or help find housing for them at a cheaper rate. And also, we have reached out and tried to talk to that, trying to reach out and work with some realtors and see if that's a possibility.
Has there been any movement on any front in getting some help?
Really, the short answer is no, not at this time.
Have you and the city manager sat down and said, okay, what would it take? How much would we need to augment the salaries that would make this a possibility for these kids?
I think at $17 an hour, we have that we're going to get some applications. And it's then when they get the sticker shock, when they start reaching out to where they're going to stay. So I think it's coming up with a price line to say at the end of the season, if you stay on, because that encourages people to stay on a little bit longer for us, you'll get a certain amount, whatever that dollar amount is, and they could put it towards whatever they want, their school for next year or for what they had to spend on housing here. And that's a lot of places around the country, New Jersey, Maryland, Outer Banks. That's kind of what they do. And as far as they'll give at the end of the year, they don't specify what it goes towards, I guess. It's a bonus.
Is there any way you can monitor that or kind of keep a running tab, city manager, and when you see coming to the end of the season, you can adjust that bonus? Do we have the discretionary funds that would, and I'm sure it would be a significant amount of money, but wow, to not have to fight that battle of housing would sure help things. Thank you.
Commissioner Legree, I in future meetings, I intend to lay out a plan and for housing for the commissioners to consider. We have a couple of things in the queue, if you will, that city-owned property that where we could possibly in the next couple of years take a hold on and actually try to come up with a specific housing. You'll know that I brought that forward with the property that last year went to auction. But I think that we'll also discuss that for a couple different city-owned properties in the next year or so. So. Of course, that's out in the future. However, workforce housing has always been a priority of mine, so we can place these young folks in the summer for the time that's needed when they are here. The chief does a great job in working with each seasonal officer in helping them and trying to find resources for them. As far as a monetary amount to put on that at the end of the year, I think it's important right now to do it fairly and to look at each individual because as they come here, and you'll hear this from the beach patrol captain also, that, young people tend to gather together and they find places. It would be great if we can assist them with any kind of stipend for their housing allowance. And we're committed to doing that as long as it's asked for, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So without putting it right out there in the front, we can certainly look at it at the back end, and we do.
Beautiful. I will support that totally. I think that's a very, very great thing to do, and keep your ear to the ground, and you'll know. Thanks, City Manager.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I certainly would support any type of, excuse me, housing stipend or end of the season incentive, such as $2 additional per hour for every hour worked or something of that nature at the end of the season. There are incentives that have come out of the aspect of, the COVID situation with regards to people not wanting to work or being able to work. So I know there's some creative plans out there. So I hope you would pursue that for this season as much as possible. The other thing, Chief, I just was curious to know, are there any costs in this budget reflective of your accreditation process? And has that been affected or implemented in any way?
It has. Thank you for asking. We actually put this in each year because every year we have to have the same amount in for Power DMS for our accreditation and all that. Because each year we get a bill on that. So it's always been included for the last 5 years in our budget, and it remains the same. So, but yes, there's some monies in for that. And the only additional thing would be is if they don't cancel it again for an event for us to go into to accept an award for accreditation and things. And we'll be doing that when I talk about the dispatch center too.
Right.
But because of COVID and all, some of the travel plans have been canceled back and forth and putting off. But yes, it is in the budget.
Thank you. And one other question is, how long are we required to keep the footage from the body cameras?
Good question. And for us, I'd have to get it back. I want to make sure I say it accurately since we're recorded and all that, because there's different things, different timelines for different parts of it. And then when we get into, we are above what the law requires in all aspects with our storage and all, but I will get back to you with a complete answer, if that's okay.
Sure, and this is all done on cloud storage outside of our servers, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Go ahead.
Chief, you're not contributing to the CIP this year, so no new vehicles, correct?
The new vehicles that have been ordered. Talking to Evan with the enterprise vehicles with the fleet service and all. So yes. I did not mention that just because they've already been ordered and approved, I guess, ahead of time to move forward. But there would be 3 that could be coming this year whenever, with all the delays with the getting vehicles, or kind of the dates have changed as far as when they come in.
But nothing specific for the 2023 CIP?
No.
Okay, great.
You've got an auto lease that figure that's 40,000 above what it was last year.
Yeah, and Mayor, that would be to account for the 3 additional police department vehicles. So there is an annual lease payment associated with that, and we've broken out the auto leases from the capital budget. So that's why you see the auto lease there.
Very good.
Yep. So typically we're not invoiced for that until we actually receive the vehicles. When we do receive the vehicles, we need to make that auto lease payment, but then we're also required to put a percentage down depending on the amount of upfits that were put into the vehicles. And the police department, those vehicles tend to have a pretty significant amount of upfits because of lighting, cages, things like that.
Very good. Thank you.
Chief, can you go over the 911 budget, please?
Absolutely. Thank you. If there's no other questions on the police, I'll move to dispatch. Dispatch, currently we have 12 dispatchers, which includes the supervisor. No changes in staffing levels, so that's going to remain the same. We are accredited in that agency through EMD, Emergency Medical Dispatch, Emergency Fire Dispatch, and Emergency Police Dispatch. And all in this year's budget reflects $9,000 extra that will come up for accreditation reapplication on that's due. We see no issues or anything with that. Everything's on target to meet that. Currently, we are looking at salaries going up again to promote people to accept these positions. So we were looking at, dispatchers currently are $16 an hour and looking at moving those up to $18.30 an hour, and to reflect in the budget. And like I said, we have a balanced budget. There's capital improvement and 0 requests that we're asking for. If you look at the budget, it's pretty much the same every year, and except for the salary and benefits does go up, but we try to offset that in other areas. And we also can use 911 funds that we have available to us and go to the board for any additional training monies that we need to outfit the dispatchers with. So again, we're just like with the police, we're always currently looking for grants and other ways to offset our budget after it's approved. But really no big changes. Any questions? If you're not familiar with it, like I said, we dispatch police, fire, and ambulance on 26 square miles. We dispatch from Angola to the Inlet Bridge. And it's been very valuable to have our own 911 center. Again, we respond to, since we're dispatching, we know where the medical services are, so a police officer responds to the medical calls as there, which has proven to be very effective and actually saving lives, being there first with the start CPR or using Narcan or whatever emergency needs arise. Does anybody have any questions on the dispatch budget or?
Chief, can you
yes.
repeat the increase in salary?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you repeat the increase in the salary amount?
Yes. The starting salary was $16 an hour, so that's around $33,800 roughly. We're looking at $18.31, I think is what it comes to. That would bring them up to $38,100 roughly. Again, that's keeping competitive with the other PSAPs in the state of Delaware, at least the lower ones here in Sussex County. And we're able to, again, balance the budget by cutting back in some other areas to get that up.
Thank you. If no one has any other questions, could I just go back to the police? I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi went down and I dropped off for a few minutes. Mayor, is that fine?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks. I think when I came back, I think you started answering the lease question, so I'm good on that. But it looks like the conference, and I'm sorry if someone already asked and you answered it, but looks like the conference and training budget was increased by 50%, going from 19.8 to 29,135 on the police budget. Is there a specific reason for that?
Bear with me, please. Yeah, that's what I was talking about with the conference and training. The ammunition has gone up a lot, and that is a significant of it.
Okay, so ammunition is in there?
Yes, it falls under training.
Okay,
all in conference and training, that counts actually it's all combined. We have our summer officers training when we have outside vendors come in and give lectures. We have to pay them to come in. And again, so they can get the proper training and credentials, and some of that has gone up too. So because that line item has been the one gone up, we cut back in some other areas.
Perfect, thank you.
During any other questions from the commissioners, Chief, you able to go into the beach patrol, please?
Yes, thank you. With me, too, if there's any questions, is Captain Jeff Giles here. We're looking at, in the budget, we submitted 75 beach patrol employees that we have budgeted. We have asked to raise the salaries there to $16. It was $14.01. Again, it's to solicit more applications and be competitive with the other beach patrols in the area. Because like the police cadets, as I mentioned earlier, housing has been an issue and still remains a top concern for us. Capital improvements request, we're looking at a new Polaris UTV to replace a 2015 model, roughly $17,000. And let's see. With the 2022 timeline, we're looking at starting the crew chiefs to start May 1st and with limited part-time hours into the opening day of Friday, May 27th. All personnel will start by Friday, May 27th, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Training, equipment, allocation, things like that will take place. The season will run through Labor Day, September 5th, and continue fall guarding into Sunday, September 25th, is what we're allocating in this budget to pay for. Again, just like the other two budgets, except for the salaries and all has gone up, we've been able to cut back in other line items, so it basically stays the same each year. And I think we have an overall good budget. I do have Captain Giles here if he'd like to add anything.
Hi, I'd like to mention that I've been working with the Rehoboth Dewey Chamber of Commerce, and I'm going to be able to do a presentation on the 24th of January with them. They're understanding our need for housing for lifeguards and police officers and city employees. So it's going to be nice that we're going to be able to present this out to the private organizations that will be there. So to start putting our heads together and maybe brainstorm some ideas so we can get the kids down here to work.
The other thing I would mention under conference and training, Captain Giles last year brought to my attention that he really thought the need to have some training, emergency medical responder certifications and things. So we did add that into budget. Captain, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, emergency responders, it's a 40-hour training block. Instead of really just an 8-hour first aid, it really teaches the lifeguards the real signs of heart attacks, strokes, and it's really going to assist in us being able to call an ambulance when need be, and be able to work with the EMTs that we will be scheduling in to work for us. We want to eventually try to get every lifeguard EMR trained. Actually it's a part of being it's a high standard to have in the USLA, the United States Lifeguarding Association. It's the highest standard. And I think in time, as we go and we try to train 12 to 15 people each year, we hopefully will get to the point where any new lifeguard that's coming in could be trained that summer, and we could actually get to that 100% rate. We had 15 done last year. Of the 15 guards, we got about 10 of them coming back, which is great. And I'm going to train another 12 to 15 this year. So then we should at least have 25 guards that are EMR trained, which is a great accomplishment. And hopefully, like I said, in a couple years, we should hopefully be to the point where we're just training the rookies.
And again, that is reflected in the budget that's balanced. And that is all I have, unless somebody has a specific question for me or the captain.
We do have three commissioners that have questions, Chief. Commissioner Legree, Gossett, and Chernowski. Go ahead, Commissioner Legree.
Yes, Captain Giles, I missed that number. You project how many beach patrol personnel?
Yeah, we're looking at 75, and that's including, myself and the EMT positions.
Yeah.
And it's also getting guards at the end that will hire to 10 part-time positions. Really, it's like 65, and then the 10 part-time positions in the fall, because we usually get other lifeguards from other departments that aren't guarding in the fall, and they'll come over to us, and we bring them on
Yeah.
the payroll for a couple weeks.
I remember. And I say the same thing to you that I said to the chief. If you see they're having trouble with housing, please share that and bring that up the chain of command. And I congratulate you that you have 10 of 15 trained people coming back. I don't know. That's great. It's great. Keep it up. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gossett.
Yes, just a clarification for me. I know it's kind of consistent, but the beach patrol donation expense of 20,000, how is that money used?
See where that is. Is that the training competition money?
Yeah, Commissioner, what we did, we kind of changed some of that up last year on how we were working that at, and I know Mr. Dukes is on here. He can elaborate eight maybe. But really, donations that comes in is going into the general, and what it was used for in the past was competitions and also we look at that as they're going way with our competitions. But I did change it up last year because I felt like I just wanted a better handle on it when, donations come in. So years past, some of the donations was used for like the junior lifeguard program, but we added the junior lifeguard program into uniforms, started last year and continue that this year. Yeah, so the donations and all that comes in, we really wanted it that's truly a donation that somebody saying, hey, my kid worked for you. It was a great experience, and we want to put money towards that. And then we look at, so I think I feel like I at least have a better handle on that. I know the city always has, but it's just the way I was doing it. I was accustomed to it, so I changed it up. But the donations, again, is for like competitions and all. Captain, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just an example I think you guys would like. Last year, we had a lifeguard of the year that received a $1,000 scholarship toward college. And his parents, he's going to Villanova, a real good lifeguard, great student. And the parents came down and gave a $1,000 donation to the city, writing a check back and thanking us that, he's grown so much from just being on the beach patrol. So, that's where that money is going back into.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Chernowski, please.
Yes, thank you. Captain, I assume we only have part-time salaries, right? We don't have any full-time, including yourself. That's why everything's under part-time.
Yes, all part-time salaries.
My only other question was that $20,000. So I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor. And in the CIP, you do have a Polaris that's a replacement, correct?
Yes, the two Polarises that we have, one's been decommissioned. The other one is we're keeping it running. I think it's a 2015. We did purchase out of last year's budget here at the end of the summer, a smaller ATV, which is sort of a quick response ATV for one of our EMTs. It's not going to have a cover over top of it. It's going to be different than the Polarises of old, but it's really going to be able to get one of our emergency personnel to an injured subject on the beach. So we did order that, and that should be in here in another couple days. We'll be picking it up.
But yes, for the upcoming budget, we do have the Polaris in it to replace the 2015 model that is, we're just piecemealing it together, and we did speak to the city mechanic, and he agrees that it's well overdue, and it's no longer cost prohibitive to keep it running. And also, we have budgeted $17,000.
One last question, if I may. I don't know if it would be reflected in this budget or not, but city manager, have we made any accommodations or additional accommodations for purchase of more beach wheels for the beach? I know they've been donated in the past, but has there been any thoughts to supplementing the donations?
So I know that we added 2 within the last couple of years. Not sure the number now. 10 resonates with me. I don't know if Captain Giles can comment on that, but we did budget for additional ones. We might be up to full complement now. Captain?
Yes, we did. We did purchase one last year, and then one was donated to us last year also. So we are up to 10. And we are working at getting some replacements, some tires and so on to keep those 10 rolling. So we have 5 on Maryland Avenue and 5 on Delaware Avenue.
Great. And again, I don't know whether this is the location for it, but just questioning the beach mats that come from the boardwalk down to the beach surface. Are we looking at extending or purchasing more of those or installing more of those? And would that be in this budget or where?
Commissioner, they are in the Streets Department budget, and we have budgeted in the CIP 58,000 to supplement what we have and hopefully get us up to basically where we need to be with all the access points.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner LaGree.
Now, I'm sorry, Captain Giles, I didn't ask this a while ago. Do you have a ballpark handle on what kind of a percentage of returnees you're going to get overall of the 75 that you're hoping to hire? I know we do 66% of the ones that you trained medically, but what about the overall?
It's interesting. We lose a lot to graduations, especially some of the kids too with college. So last year I had only 18 returning lifeguards from taking over the job, and we brought in 20. Actually, I had 20 go through rookie training. So we were like 38, and then I hired about 10 people as we went through the season. I'm looking at having at least 30 coming back this year, which is a lot of lifeguards coming back because a lot of the rookies that we got are just starting in college or in their second or third year. So it really could be dependent. I don't think that it's something that you can predict. Well, we sort of can predict because it's sort of when they get to the end of college, we start to lose them. So we will have about 30 coming back this year. So that's going to help us. But I think as I go on each year, I will get the numbers together and the percentages for you, because I think in time we'll start to be able maybe to predict, with the age of the lifeguards that we have, when we're going to have more issues or less issues.
Is our new pay scale? You said we've talked competitive, but are we at the top? Are we close to the top of the pay scale with our competitors?
Last year, a lot of our competitors, Fenwick Island, Bethany Beach, South Bethany, they were 16 to 1675 to start, and we were at 1410. The only other patrol that was as low as us, or maybe a little bit lower, was Dewey Beach Patrol. So we were not competitive last year, but moving up to 16 is going to help us. I don't know the budgets of the other patrols, if they went up. I'm not sure, but we are up to the standard that they were last year.
If I may, though, just like with the 30 returning, it basically goes a quarter more each year for the returning. And also, some of these are actually been here 4 or 5 years, so they're like maxed out. So some of them are, $17, $18 an hour and things like that. So that's where we get a little bit more competitive, where some of the others don't get as much for coming back year after year. And all. And again, with his the chiefs and lieutenants, and he has sergeants and different types, different levels, they get different increases than that. So that's just the minimum when 16 just starting. So it sounds like if he has around 30, they're going to be around 1625.
Yeah, and also, Chief, I want to thank you and City Manager for paying for the lunches. We used to have the lunches, it was an hour lunch, and it wasn't a paid-for commodity, and now that is actually paid for, and the lifeguards stay around, they go to the shack, they eat lunch, they're available and ready for any type of emergency. So that's really helped out also. They get a full 8-hour day.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Captain Giles. I sure want us to stay up high on that list. This is not the cheapest place to live. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sharon?
Captain Giles, I know this was your first summer, and thank you for taking on the responsibility. I think your first summer, you did a great job. I know the Chief Banks would second that. And you took on the position at a time of transition, and you brought on new opportunities for the guards, as well as bringing back some, I'll call them much needed representation from the alumni. And I know that's a huge piece of the Rehoboth Beach Patrol and how proud everyone is of the institution and its 100 years of existence. And you plan a celebration next year, is that right? Or this year?
Yes, and thank you for working with us and the Alumni Association. July 30th, we will be at Convention Hall. We're getting everything together. Hopefully the COVID restrictions will be lifted. And we got a tremendous amount of response for people coming. So we're going to have lots of different activities through the summer celebrating 100 years.
How many active alumni do we have, Captain?
I think we're well over 400 at this point. And we are still recruiting. We're getting more people coming about. And there's, again, the professional group called the Cover Down Group, which is on LinkedIn. And we have really been working with them and their mentoring and leadership program, helping out the guards find jobs and being productive has been great. So this is all sort of new initiatives, and it's just the beginning.
That's great. And you yourself were a guard, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. A long time ago.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Sharon, before we go to the next topic, if that's what's next, I'd like to pause for public comment. Is that all right?
Oh, certainly, Mayor, yes.
We've just covered the police, dispatch, and beach patrol. Walter, you're the only member of the public. Do you have any comments you'd like to share at this time?
I believe Walter's dropped off the call.
Dropped off the call. Very good. Back to you, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We can go into, I did want to touch just briefly on the revenue. I said that as in past years, we budget very conservatively for revenue sources. If we can just highlight those revenue sources that I'll say we're very positive this past year. That includes the hotel tax. Certainly we saw a huge summer season in respect of hotels in the second year of hotel tax implementation here. So the first year it wasn't that bad. Last year, we're in 2020, we thought we would take a greater hit than we did, but certainly this past year, 2021 summer, the hotel accommodation tax exceeded our budgeted amount. We're still, I say, budgeting that conservatively for next year. We also, parking revenue was pretty much in line with what it had been in 2019. So we look at that as a positive. And again, we see in the parking department revenue, and we can touch upon that again, but we are less and less and less coins. So our endeavors in adding pay stations and Park Mobile certainly has paid off in, I know, the last 5 to 7 years.
At some point, can Evan explain the different categories of parking meter revenue? By example, the parking meter revenue 402,100 went down by $400,000.
Mhm. Yeah, Mayor, if it's okay, if we can just get to that, I just wanted to touch on revenues in general, and when we get to the parking, we'll hone in on that.
Very good.
But Bert, if you can talk about the revenue and your view, and I know we made slight increases to balance the budget, very slight, because Mr. Dukes keeps a high restraint on all of that. So Bert, if you can just touch on that in the revenue department, please.
Two of the categories where we increased the revenue were property transfer tax. That's been held very conservatively at 1.6 million. We collected almost 4.2 last year. It looks like the activity is still continuing, and I think it's reasonable, very reasonable, that we can obtain 1.7 million in the coming year. I don't think that's off the mark. The hotel accommodations tax, that was new territory for us. We didn't really know what to expect. Year to date, and I just checked it on to see if it had increased any since the budget was prepared. But basically, we were 1.4 million, so we've still got about 3.5 months to reach 1.7 million. Well, the budget's not that high; it's only $1 million, but we do think that 1.7 is probably a reasonable number. The other categories, for the most part, were flat, and we'll continue as we move through the budget to reevaluate. There may be in the water sewer, when we get to that, justification to increase some of the budgeted revenue there. But the two primary items in the general fund budget were property transfer tax and the hotel accommodations tax. There was an additional $200,000 there.
Thank you, Bert.
Just point of clarification for that. Both of those fall into the general fund for use, correct? There's no, if you will, earmarked or special funds that those two revenue sources support directly. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're not restricted. So it's for the use, unrestricted use of whatever we need to spend the money on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Also in the today's presentation, we have the communications department budget, and Lynn Cohen's on the line here, I think, to go over some of that and some new strategies she has. Lynn?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to speak with you about the FY23 budget. I know that communications is very important to you, to residents, but we don't often get an opportunity to chat about it. So I wanted to just start with an explanation of kind of what my focus has been since I started with the city in April. And that really has been this year to create regular channels of communications with our stakeholders, to be present and with people who are interested in information from the city. So one of the things that we did was create a regular digital newsletter, Lines in the Sand. I've also worked to create a more vibrant and regular social media presence. And this year, for the first time, the city sent out its calendar to all property owners. So in the FY23 budget, the communications budget is about $20,000 higher than the previous year. I just want to give you a brief explanation of why that is. One of the lines that is increased is the printing and forms, and that really reflects the cost of the calendar, which we printed about 4,000 this year at a cost of approximately $7,200 to print. There were also postage and mailing and design charges related to that project as well. So most of that is explained by the calendar. And then the other line that is increased is advertising at $22,600. And I'm not really planning to spend $22,000 on advertising. I think that our advertising will be closer to about 10,000. Some of the places that we advertise are the Beach Book, Beach Life Magazine, the Chamber Visitors Guide, the Cape Gazette. So this year, I'm doing a couple of things differently. For example, in the Beach Book, the city has paid for a premium spot to be closer to the front of that. And I also would like to experiment with some social media advertising. Increasingly, Facebook is becoming a pay-to-play platform, and I'd like to see how much traction we can get with some advertising on that platform. The rest of that line, about approximately $12,000, I really am recommending that we create a new line for contracted services, which would cover design of ads in the calendar, excuse me, and also photo and video services. I'm a firm believer that increasingly video and photos are crucial tools for communication, and I'd like to enhance the city's library of those materials. And then if the commissioners are so inclined, there's an engagement tool that I've learned about that I think would be intriguing to give a try. It's called Flashvote, and their pitch is that they provide statistically valid feedback to communities on issues. So it's a survey service, but the difference is it's not just any survey that anyone can sign up and respond to. It's randomly selected people, and again, statistically valid. For a community of Rehoboth Beach's size, the cost is about $5,000 a year, and that would cover about 5 surveys. So that may be an option. And then the one other thing I want to mention is I have recommended that the city replace its Code Red service with a service provided by Nixle. And so Code Red, as you may know, the city uses to send out emergency type information. When I've used these kind of services in the past, the way I've described it is these are text messages and emails that alert people that things are not as they should be. A road is closed, a water main is broken, an event has been canceled, something like that. So something is out of the norm. And the advantage of Nixle over Code Red is very limited geographically. You have to be within the city limits to be eligible to sign up for Code Red. With Nixle, anyone who is interested may sign up. They can unsubscribe at any time. I feel like there are lots of people in the Rehoboth area and certainly among our visitors who would be interested in this kind of alert information that we could share. So that's not reflected in the budget. Actually, that is in the chief's budget. So thanks to him for covering that. It should be, we expected it would be about $3,300. And that is about all I have. So if you have questions, happy to address them.
Thank you, Lynn. Commissioner Tim Bennett and then Commissioner Gay.
Yes, hi. As city manager, Lynn had acknowledged, this is my first time through, so I apologize if I am off the off the reservation a little bit in terms of categories. I was looking at the various categories, and so I think communications is probably where this one falls in. And in 2023, it's the city's 150th anniversary or sesquicentennial. And I didn't know if there was any discussion, or has the city ever done anything like that? And would that fall under the communications budget, or do we not celebrate milestone anniversaries here?
Good question, Commissioner Bennett. I'm not aware that we have in the past. Seems to me that probably somewhere along the way we did. I know when we moved from the old city hall to the new city hall complex, and we cleaned out some office space and cleaned out the old safe. There were commemorative coins, so we must have done something.
Right. Yeah, I just felt it probably should go under, I was looking at the other categories to see, I thought maybe it might be under bandstand and events or something, but it's something for us to, I hate to just drop it on everybody here, but I was looking at the dates, and I just saw for 2023, if it's something we want to do, we probably should either include it or start planning for it. So just a thought.
Okay.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for bringing that up. That's great. Lynn, I'm curious. You mentioned on the advertising budget that the advertising, I think, in the beach book, where you're going to take a more prominent location. Is that what you said?
Yes.
What's the nature of the advertising that you do in the beach book?
So this year, in previous years, I think the focus has been like beach rules and that kind of thing. So we had a conversation with some staff members, and we talked about what is it that people are always calling about and that they want to know. And so what we came up with was really visitor kind of related questions. So the ad has already been designed and it's been submitted, and it focuses on parking guidelines, some highlighted parking information, and then some of our beach guidelines, like, yes, you can rent chairs and umbrellas on the beach. No, you can't have a tent on the beach. And then it refers people to a web page, which we've titled Best Beach Visit Ever, that extends those rules and guidelines.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's good. And then you mentioned this new survey, Flash Vote. If you could talk a little bit more about that. I know you said that it's statistically valid because it picks random people or whatever, but how do we know, where does it get them from, and how do we know they're our constituents, and how is all that done?
So I am not thoroughly versed in Flash Vote, but I attended a presentation at a conference that I went to earlier this year, and if you go to the website, and I just had it up, it's flashvote.com. They have great little videos that demonstrate the kind of surveys that they do, and how typical feedback from residents can be skewed.
Mm-hmm.
So your other question was,
how are they going to pick, who to survey? Because my understanding is that the city does not have a comprehensive database of all property owners' email addresses.
Right. And I'm not 100% sure that, Commissioner. I think that we would provide them, my guess is that we could provide them with a GPS list of addresses, generated list of addresses that would be appropriate, and they do, and then they could reach out. I believe they reach out to them and ask who would be interested in being part of this group, or folks can also sign up on their website. So I would need to learn more about that myself.
Okay. So people would have to sign up for it anew rather than it coming from your current subscriber list to Lines in the Sand, for instance.
Correct.
Okay. And then the last question is that when you first came here, I thought there was some talk of revamping the city's website. And I didn't know whether that was going to all be done internally or what, because I don't see it on here as a broken out expense anyway.
Right. So Max Hamby and I did discuss whether we should suggest that this year. For a couple of reasons, we have not. We'd like to take a stab at tidying up the website, making it more user-friendly with the current system. We recently upgraded the Drupal back end, and so we do think that that is in the near future, a need for the near future, but for the short term, we'd like to give it a shot at improving what we have for now.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, that was my question too, upgrade of the website. I didn't see it, but you've explained it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, let's go to the Parking Department budget.
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, commissioners and members of the public. First and foremost, I want to thank Frank Lloyd and June Embert for all the work that they do day in and day out, especially during the summer season. I guess we'll go ahead and get started on the parking permit department budget. That would be page 24. If you want to turn to that page. No real changes for the parking permit department for this fiscal year. One main change, I guess, that you'll see is a line for the informational map. Historically, that amount for the $4,500 has been charged to the communications department. But that is actually for the city's parking walking guide that we do every single year. That guide basically includes information about parking in the city, but also just visitorship in general, beach rules, regulations, things like that. And it includes the map of the city of Rehoboth Beach and just additional information on parking. So that number has been rebudgeted back in parking permits because we thought it suited better for that department. And I will entertain any questions you have right now for the parking permit department.
Evan, question. I know we have the parking enforcement. What are our hourly rates for those employees?
Sure. So traditionally, actually last year, the permit department first year starting salary was $12.66. We are actually proposing to increase that this year only because of the research that we've done across other municipalities as it relates to parking enforcement. So we right now have proposed $16 for parking permit sales. So it's increasing pretty significantly, but we think that'll help attract the talent that we need. And that's sort of across the board for patrol, parking enforcement technicians. We also hire a streets painter every summer to assist with painting. And then also parking office. So there are some slight increases with the hourly rates for those positions as well. Right now, we're proposing the parking office to start at $16.50 and parking patrol enforcement technician $16.25.
And that the patrol, that is also in the license plate reader, automobile and on bicycle?
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Gay?
Evan, thanks. That's nice to have that increase. But despite that, the salary line has gone down. Do you have fewer people or what?
I think that's something that I'll have to look at. I'd look to Bert on. That is something that we do every year. I know, actually the actual number from last year was just around 24,000. So that may be a number that we need to look at again.
Okay, but is it up for a little bit from that, tiny bit? Yeah. Okay, but the new rate has been factored in here.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
We also had some funds budgeted in the parking meter department, so we might just need to reallocate some of the funds there for that.
Okay.
If there are no further questions on the parking permit department, I can move to the parking meter department.
Yes, please.
Sure. So the parking meter department, the total budget has increased about $500,000, which I'll explain. One thing that I had mentioned earlier was the part-time salaries has increased, so we're now looking to pay between $16.25 and $16.50 for parking enforcement as well as parking office clerks. We also have another line that you'll see a significant increase in is equipment installation. So that's 513,000. You'll see $130,000 there, and that is to install what we're proposing to be 79 new parking pay stations. And I'll get into that a little bit further when we get down to the capital outlays. Next, we have increased a little bit in the conferences and training line. That's 515,200. Reason being because traditionally we haven't budgeted much for conferences and training as it relates to parking staff. But as we've transitioned towards this license plate recognition, there's a lot of information out there, certainly provided by our provider, T2 Systems, but also the parking industry in general. So every year they do what they call a T2 Connect conference, where a lot of different municipalities, universities get together. They show a lot of the new technology that's out there now, capabilities, things like that. So there is an increasing space for conferences and training as it relates to parking. So we have thrown a little bit in there for June and Frank to attend the Connect conference next fiscal year. You'll also see just a slight increase for advertising. Advertising is always something that's challenging, so we've bumped that up just a little bit. You see that we went a little bit over budget last year, just trying to recruit employees. And then finally, the largest increase would be to capital outlays. We have a total of $550,000 proposed for parking meter installation. And I will just share my screen right now so I can show you an overview of what we're proposing for this year. Okay. So we currently have on Rehoboth Avenue, let me just find my sheet here, approximately 93 parking pay stations. These are meters that were installed approximately 7 years ago. And they are actually made by a company called Parkion. Parkion was purchased by a company by the name of Flowbird. So they now operate under the name Flowbird. So again, they are about 7 years old, and we desperately need to replace these pay stations. So you'll recall just an overview of our parking meter replacement program. It began in 2019 when we replaced 46 pay stations, or installed 46 parking pay stations, and those were in the area of Baltimore, Maryland, Wilmington, and Delaware avenues. And then in 2020, we installed 48 parking pay stations, and that covered the area as far north as Virginia Avenue and as far south as Hickman. And then we also included some other areas as well, such as the Martin's Lawn parking lot just off of Christian Street. And then in 2021, we installed 29 parking pay stations, and that included the area of Lake Avenue, north by the Henlopen condos. That also included a meter at Grove Park, and then also along Christian Street as well. So what we're proposing again for this year is the installation of 79 new parking pay stations. That would include installing 71 pay stations on Rehoboth Avenue. I had mentioned earlier that we have right now about 93, but because of the way that the new parking meters operate, we would look to go towards a pay-by-license plate enforcement system as opposed to a pay-by-space. The pay-by-space system is just very challenging in the sense that a pay-by-space system requires many more zones You'll recall that on Rehoboth Avenue, if you park in a particular parking space, you have to not only identify your space number, but you have to go to the correct meter and pay that meter. So that certainly is a challenge. And then the thermoplastic numbering that goes in each space is also extremely expensive. We anticipate as much as $9,000 to $10,000 every year just to maintain the thermoplastic numbering. So just keeping in track with what we've done over the last 3 years, we're proposing to install these pay stations along Rehoboth Avenue. We would convert to a pay-by-space or a pay-by-license plate system, which would help us eliminate as many as 22 pay stations on Rehoboth Avenue. So drastically cutting back the number of pay stations we currently maintain on an annual basis, just simply because they're not needed. In most of these locations, for example, on the median, the north side is controlled by one meter, the south side is controlled by a separate meter. So you have two meters that sit directly across from one another. When you transition towards a pay-by-plate system, that's just simply not needed. Again, every meter is its own zone. So we have right now 93 zones. That includes park mobile zones on Rehoboth Avenue. And by streamlining this process, going to a pay-by-plate system, we would have at most 4 to 5 zones, which would essentially mean that you don't have to identify a particular meter that's closest to your spot. You could go to virtually any pay station within that zone and pay for your time at the meter. So here is basically orange is a preliminary identification of where we're proposing to put those meters. All of the orange ones are just basically remove and replace. All of the red icons are the areas that we're proposing to remove. And then included within the 79 total pay stations would be 2 pay stations in the convention center parking lot, which are also Parkeon or Flowbird meters, as well as 3 meters at Grenoble Place. There are 4 existing right now. And then finally, another proposal that we have before you is to install 3 parking meters at the Deauville Beach parking lot. The permit system would stay the same in the sense that a daily permit would be purchased for the Deauville Beach parking lot. The only change is now, as opposed to pulling into the lot, visiting the attendant, paying in cash for that permit, receiving the physical permit, and then parking, one would just go into the lot, approach any of the 3 meters that we're proposing there, purchase the daily rate, and then again, it would be tied to the license plate. So it would be enforced through LPR, pay by plate. So we would move towards a consistent enforcement method citywide. So this certainly helps with consolidation. We would eliminate the 2 meter, or we would eliminate having 2 different meter providers, maintaining 2 different software configurations for those meters, eliminate 2 different enforcement methods, and just make it consistent citywide. And I think that's all I have. I will certainly entertain any questions.
Evan, have we collected enough data for the past 10 years on the cost to purchase the parking equipment and the labor to install it, and done an analysis? Are our parking rates keeping up with the purchase and replacement of these parking meters?
I would say so, Mayor. I haven't done a formal analysis. A new parking meter costs a new pay station typically around $5,000 to $6,000. There's a monthly subscription fee of $60 per pay station. The installation is somewhat minimal. We try to factor in economies of scale. So, as opposed to doing 1 or 2 meters, we do all of them at the same time. But I would certainly say that, we are seeing huge benefits on our side in terms of efficiency. I'll give you an example. The finance department, the way that we have these new meters set up is we can have daily revenue reports sent to the finance department every night, which basically gives them an accurate accounting of what revenue was made that day at these meters. It's just extremely, efficient for them to be able to use that, tie it out, and then book it as revenue. These meters also give us, the parking department, real-time information in terms of maintenance requirements. So if we see that a meter is not disposing receipts properly, or there's a coin jam, or there's other issues, we get real-time alerts and the technicians are able to be dispatched out. Typically, how they work on the avenue is we get a call, the parking department gets a call from a visitor who says they went to the meter, it's not working. So they then have to dispatch a technician out to go visit the meter. By the time the technician gets there, the customer's left or they've gone to a different meter. So there's certainly a lot of efficiencies. I think that would be hard to quantify internally, but I would say that just in general, the change in technology that we've seen with these new meters is just completely worth the investment.
All right. I just want to make sure that our parking patrons are the ones paying for the new technology and the new meters and everything. Thank you, Evan. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, thanks. Evan, from what this is the last phase of these meter replacements, is that right? These pay
That's correct.
station new ones?
Yep.
Because I see it on here as 550, but there's nothing in the subsequent year. So this is the last one. What's the lifespan of these?
I think they would tell us maybe 6 or 7 years, but we've already had some meters, like I said, for 3 years, and we have still had no issues with these meters. They're extremely easy to maintain, to work on. We keep a pretty good inventory of spare parts in the event that something does happen, and we've rarely had to really tap into that inventory. So, we're 3 years in on some of these meters, and we still have yet to have significant issues with as many as one.
Okay. And I think that the mayor raised an excellent point that I would actually like to see at some point spelled out, and that is because I was looking at the revenue from parking, which is in a bunch of different categories. So I had to add it myself, and it came to 6.45 million for preliminary 2023. And the costs are 2 million. So the net revenue from parking is something over 4 million. And I would be very curious how that compares to the last few years. And also, I have no idea. I mean, we talked about a lot of things this morning, and I understand we're probably not changing the parking season. There's not time to do that right now. But I think we did agree that we weren't going to have meterless Mondays, and I just didn't know what's reflected in the budget for revenue and what decisions we make or need to make in the near term on that. But I'm really mostly curious about, is the revenue keeping up with not only with the expenses but with what we need the revenue to cover, which is the services that we provide for visitors.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and I'm sure I could prepare something that sort of compares that. I will talk just briefly to the revenue that the mayor had brought up, and Bert, certainly feel free to chime in. So on page 4 is the overview of the general fund revenue budget. In line 402-100, that's parking meter revenue. That shows you, if you'll recall, I had done a presentation back at the end of the summer, sort of recapping the summer season, where it had shown, the significant decrease in coin revenue that we've seen. So the actual number for 2022, $193,265. So that was just coin revenue at the meters. So there was certainly, that's about $480,000 that, we had budgeted for, but we didn't make. However, we really picked up that revenue 3 lines down in 402-150 pay by phone revenue, because there has been a huge shift towards Park Mobile and payment by phone, in addition to paying by credit card as well. So that is, one of our big arguments for pushing for meters down at Deauville Beach. Frequently what you'll see is that a line will start to form at the entrance to Deauville Beach, because what happens is somebody pulls into the lot, they want to purchase a permit, they don't realize that it's cash only, then they have to leave the lot, go find cash, come back, and it's just, that individual who is staffing the lot down there has to make contact with every single person coming into the lot. So by putting meters there, we're able to accept Park Mobile, which would be huge for Deauville Beach. We'd also be able to accept credit cards. We likely would not put coin acceptors in down there, because if we were to go, keep it consistent, do a daily permit, that's $15 during the weekday, $20 on the weekend. Nobody's going to have $15 or $20 worth of quarters. So we really think that by installing meters down there, it would make enforcement a lot easier. It would help accommodate that trend that we've seen, increasing credit card revenue, pay by phone revenue, and ultimately just help, the flow of the parking lot a lot better.
Sounds like it. Yeah, though, I guess the last question is back over on expenses. I know
Sure.
that the park mobile fees were way up in 2022, but they're projected to go back down for next year.
Yes,
So,
and
yeah.
let me just turn to that page because there's a reason for that. So one of the things that we had done was we had made a change internally where Park Mobile used to be the merchant of record, and this year they were not the merchant of record, which means that we received invoices from Park Mobile that we had to pay them. So essentially, we are making the change back where they will be the merchant of record, and that expense will significantly decrease back to what it was in years past.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's all, thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Sernowski, Legree, and Gossett.
Uh,
Ed?
Yeah, thank you, Evan. Bear with me, I've got a few questions. We currently have how many vehicles that read the license plates?
We have two, Commissioner.
We have two. And since we've changed some of the other pay stations to be license plate reading technology, we've primarily only been using those vehicles to enforce that area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that also the plan for Rehoboth Avenue now?
That is actually not the plan for Rehoboth Avenue because we have pretty significant concerns with just having two lanes on either side, westbound, eastbound on Rehoboth Avenue, and parking on either side as well. So we have actually been back and forth with T2, our provider, and we actually have the capability to enforce basically the same way we do now, and that would be walking enforcement with a handheld device. Essentially what they would do is once we've set up the avenue with the zones that we designate, they would be able to pull up a particular zone on Rehoboth Avenue and see a list of all the paid license plates. They'd also be able to search for a particular license plate and see whether or not it's paid. So it's the same process we're doing now as opposed to searching for a paid space number. They're just searching for a paid license plate number.
Okay. Will they be able to scan a license plate, or it's all manual input on the device?
Yes, the mobile device does have the capability to scan the license plate from the camera roll. So it'll scan it, and it'll even read the license plate back to the enforcement officer. So there is some efficiency there. I'll also add that we would still have the capability to enforce Rehoboth Avenue with the LPR vehicles. It's just a matter of, picking how best to enforce that day. Certainly when Rehoboth Avenue is backed up because it starts to rain, it's not practical to enforce with a vehicle. But on certain areas, I think we had mentioned earlier today in our workshop meeting about enforcement around the bandstand. Things like that we would still be able to do. It's really just sort of picking what method we think will be best. But right now, we do think that maintaining the walking enforcement with the handheld is going to be a lot more practical.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I agree with your assessment, trying to have the vehicles on Rehoboth Avenue doing enforcement. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner Legree?
Yeah, Evan, and I'm sorry that I didn't pick this up. Would you say again what our operating expenses? I see that it's 2037 497, and the revenue for parking is what again?
Just 1 second.
Or I can add it up if that's what you have to do.
Sure. So the pay by phone revenue, and this would be actual numbers from this past summer. The pay-by-phone revenue was $2,276,912. Parking credit card revenue, $2,269,006. And then parking meter revenue, which is your coins, $193,265. And that also excludes revenue from parking permit sales, parking meter fines, bus permits, parking permit fines, things like that. So there are a few different revenue accounts that have to be accounted for.
Thanks, Evan.
Sure.
I'll add all of them, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett, please.
Yes, thank you. Evan, with the new installation, we currently don't have pay and display anywhere, do we?
We do not. Well, we actually use, right now, we use pay and display in the convention center. Frank's with me, so I'm going to look back to Frank. Yes, we do use pay and display in the convention center. Pay and display is extremely challenging because it gives us no unique identifier to search for to determine whether or not somebody actually paid. The only thing that we have is a receipt, and if the individual who parked loses their receipt, we have no way to validate that they did in fact pay the meter. So that's one of the challenges. So, back months ago when we started discussing Rehoboth Avenue and what we wanted to do on Rehoboth Avenue, we certainly tossed around the idea of doing a pay and display or continuing with the pay by space. But both, it was just, it didn't make sense to do. So we think the pay by plate makes the most sense. It makes it consistent citywide. And, it is just probably the best way to go given the investment that we've made so far.
Great, I appreciate that. Now, I know you talked about the map and parking map and what have you, but is there any other plan for, because we're changing over to all one system, the license plate indication about advertising or communicating this to our guests and our residents and what have you?
Absolutely, yeah. So certainly, in addition to press releases, website updates, things like that, one of the things that I've been doing, I've been in contact with Park Mobile. Park Mobile has been a phenomenal partner to us because over the course of the last 3 years, as we've installed signage, they have actually worked with us to incorporate some of the city's regulatory information about how to use a parking meter, rules and regulations, things like that. They've worked with us to include some of that language on their signage. So, the first year we had done this, we had 2 signs. It was a lot, it was clutter. So the second year we had actually consolidated them. The third year we simplified it, made some colors pop, changed some of the language. So what we're looking to do is not to install signage on the avenue. We don't have that now. I don't think there's any reason we should install signage. It would just be more of a visual clutter. But actually Park Mobile is willing to provide stickers or sort of a wrap, if you will. But it would just be large stickers on the sides of the pay station, the back of the pay station, the front of the pay station, which just gives the visitor information that, it's a pay-by-plate system. This is how you use the meter. This is when it's enforced, and this is the Park Mobile zone number. So I know they had actually approached us a couple years ago because they were interested in adding signage on the avenue to communicate that Park Mobile is available. And I told them that we weren't interested in signage. We're very careful about aesthetics and sensitive to aesthetics. But I think, having these stickers would be a great way to communicate that information right there on the street.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp.
Just quickly, on Deauville Beach, the 3 that you mentioned that could be installed there, what happens to the attendant?
So the attendant we would hope that maybe they would be interested in another position elsewhere within the department. But theoretically, we could do away with 2 attendants that we have down there that staff that lot. And just simply by accepting payment at the machine, we would not need attendants down there.
Thank you.
There is one important change that I want to mention to the commissioners, that if we were to go towards a metered system down at Deauville Beach, if I recall correctly, I think it was in 2019, there was an ordinance that was adopted which authorized anybody who purchases a parking permit, regardless of, where they purchased it, if it was on Rehoboth Avenue or at the parking department, they were granted access to park at Deauville Beach. That was not the case in 2018 and years prior to that. Deauville had always been a unique, specific Deauville Beach parking permit. So if we were to go toward a metered system that sells permits down at Deauville Beach, I would strongly recommend that we go back towards a Deauville Beach specific permit. For the reason being that if we were to go down there and enforce with license plate recognition, if somebody is displaying a parking permit that they purchased elsewhere, our system is automatically going to alert us to that vehicle that they're in violation. So the enforcement officers would have to get out and walk to the front of the vehicle, check for the permit, and if they do have a permit, they'd have to get back in and keep going. So there's the potential that it would be an extremely inefficient and slow enforcement process down there if we were to utilize a virtual permit being license plate and a physical permit being a weekly permit, daily permit, seasonal permit, whatever might be accepted down there.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes, is this the area where we would talk about whether we were going to keep parking fees the same, or were we talking about perhaps raising them?
Sharon? Excuse me.
I don't, the Deauville Beach area?
No, just overall.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, we wanted to bring up the fact that maybe the commissioner would consider just making the rates overall all consistent. Does that answer your question, or did I lose something?
Yeah, no, I unless I misunderstood this morning, I thought we were going to discuss, and I don't know if this is the right time, but I thought we were going to discuss whether we would entertain a change in the parking fee, the hourly rates, and that sort of thing. I didn't know if this was the area to do that, or is that another time?
Certainly, I think it can be brought up now, extending the season, looking at the rates. Yes, you're in the right queue, Commissioner. We're in the parking department.
Okay, I would,
unless Mayor Mills thinks that it's not part of the budget, but obviously overall it is.
Well, it is part of the budget, but from this morning's meeting, I think we tasked Evan with taking everybody's thoughts on increasing the season and possibly changes to the parking fee structure and bringing them back. Maybe we need to do that sooner than later.
Yeah. If it's going to affect the visitor guide, yes.
Remind me what the current fee is. Is two separate fees?
Yes, if you're referring to Deauville Beach, yeah. So during the weekday, permit is $15, weekend it's $20.
And hourly rates throughout the city are 2 and 3?
Yes, correct. So just to refresh your memory, so Rehoboth Avenue from the boardwalk to 4th Street is $3 an hour. Baltimore and Wilmington Avenues are also $3 an hour.
Everything else is $2 an hour, correct?
Correct.
Which means further Rehoboth Avenue, some beyond 4th Street, North 1st and North 2nd Street. The parking metered areas in the first block of, Maryland, Olive, Virginia, et cetera, are all the $2 an hour. Is that right?
That's correct.
So now would be appropriate time to talk about pay increases. And I also have on here Commissioner Legree and Ed. Do your comments have to do with price increases or finishing earlier conversation? Jay Legree first and then Ed.
My comments were Deauville Beach and the utilization of that parking area by residents that are in that area using their parking permits to allow them to park there. Do we have data on that?
We don't. I had actually pulled some of the revenue information from Deauville Beach back when we had made that change, and there was no change to the revenue at Deauville Beach, surprisingly. The only information I think I could provide is if I were to talk to, some of the staff that had worked there and just ask them to estimate how many, what percentage of people who came in there had a permit already, whether it be a weekly permit that they purchased from the parking department or a seasonal permit that they had from just being a resident. But the revenue doesn't show any significant decline when that change was made.
Oh, okay. I've had conversations with people living in the area who said, wow, that's a great benefit. But if they're not using the benefit, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly cognizant of the fact that is a huge benefit. It's just for us to implement a change, to the license plate recognition to make it more efficient for the staff. Keeping that program would just be extremely difficult to manage with that process.
And there is no way that a resident could enter their license plate into the system. Just wouldn't work.
That's correct. Yeah, we've had some discussion in years past about a virtual parking permit system, which would be a pay-by-plate or a license plate-based permit, but we have not gone that direction yet, Commissioner, in the permitted areas.
And if I asked your opinion, what would your opinion be on that, on setting up a virtual? Of course, we have hang tags that we give to our visitor. Okay.
Yeah, it was something that we had looked into, over the course of the last 2 years, and I think we got to the point where we just were not satisfied with some of the answers that we had been provided with by the company that we use, because as you said, I mean, we have the code is very. A lot of people are entitled to certain types of permits, number of permits, things like that. So trying to maintain that system. Or even cut it back a little bit in order to make it work was just challenging. So it just involves more discussion, and it could take some more time to implement, but still something that's on our radar.
Okay, I'm sure that residents are listening to this. Maybe they're not, but I'm sure that the residents will find out that we're thinking about changing that, and we'll hear from them.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Evan.
Commissioner Bennett, I haven't forgotten you. We'll get back to you. Commissioner Shanowski, you're the last in line here. Did you have comments on Deauville Beach or do you want?
Yeah, Deauville specifically. Kevin just confirmed that residents using their parking pass can park there. I don't know that we'll find a whole lot that would complain about parking there often for long periods of time, but I do believe we have a lot of residents that will go down there to play tennis or whatever the case may be. I think we will get quite a few complaints about that. So I think we need to be mindful and ready for that. My other question is regarding the 2 attendants down there, do they not have other duties besides just the parking lot? Do they not help with the tennis courts and other things related to parks and rec?
Frank is here with me. He could help, but no, that's strictly their duty. There's 2 individuals. They've been here for 6 or so years, maybe even longer, and that's what they do. They stay at the shed. They rotate days, but they're at the shed, and they're either checking for a permit or they're selling the permits themselves.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So let's go back to Commissioner Bennett's interest in taking a look at fees for meters throughout the town and for parking permits. Go ahead, Tim.
I just, as I look at this and just simple math, is if we're going to have a $500,000 charge to replace these machines, I just think that we should revisit what we charge for our parking fees per hour, along with the fact that we had an awful lot of discussion in the last 2 years that we've had so much overcrowding with people coming into town that I think it's time for us to revisit the $2 an hour or $3 an hour fee. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, you know, I look at who should pay for what. We've got the parking meters to be replaced. Somebody should pay for that. And I think the parking patrons should do it. But I also think our visitors should have part of the formula for their payment should be for beach cleaning, for the restroom cleaning and all that. So again, that's why I guess I wanted to analyze parking fees relative to all the services they get, including replacement of those meters. Because if it's $500,000 this year and they're going to be replaced every 5 years or so, or 7 years, we need to take that into account, I think. Commissioner Legree?
The Boardwalk and Beach Committee will certainly second your statement. We agree. There's the fees should reflect what it's costing us to maintain the boardwalk, comb the beach, pick up recyclables, and sort them by hand. The works. And we're not going to, if we're not going to have beach tags or any forms of payment in those directions, we should have our visitors help out to pay the fees to keep us going.
Well, thank you. And I want us to be mindful also that we've come a long way in restroom maintenance in the last, say, 5 years by including having full-time attendants at the restrooms. And these attendants, they're not cheap. That's a very expensive venture. And yet we find that there is value to having them there and having much cleaner restroom facilities and possibly less graffiti and less crime, so to speak. So I think that's very important to have as part of our formula. Commissioner Gossett.
Yes, I would agree and strongly raising the parking rates, but also that was my question earlier is the hotel tax. When I remember us talking about instituting that, I thought there was some discussion about utilizing those funds to, if you will, target beach replenishment or boardwalk repair, recycling pickup, trash pickup, maintenance, beach maintenance, that type of thing. But you know, that it all goes into one pot and comes out, I guess. But to me, that those are the visitors also, as much as somebody's paying a parking meter, somebody that's staying in a hotel, they are utilizing those services most likely of the beach and the boardwalk and what have you. That so some of those funds I think should be looked at for exclusive use of those expenses.
I agree with all of that, but for your first mention of beach replenishment. I don't recall that was ever part of that, but you're right. Beach maintenance, maintenance of the restroom facility, maintenance itself of the boardwalk. I believe we're all included in that, correct?
Yeah, but I don't know that we've made that connection, so.
Right. No, we haven't. Commissioner Chernowski?
As we continue discussion about increasing parking fees, and I wouldn't just say meter, I think we need to look at permits as well. And it would be helpful to know what other communities around us are charging, so we know whether we're in line. Similarly to our discussion this morning, we talked about timing, when some communities start their meters and when they end, but we haven't really talked about how we compare to the fees. So that would be helpful for me to know that.
Commissioner Gay, in your chart that you read off of this morning, did you happen to collect fee schedules as well?
No. As I said this morning, it was a sort of a quick and dirty thing to look at seasons, and the only thing I did look at was I briefly looked at exceptions, like, you know, where we had the meterless Mondays, like Dewey has Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings for 5 hours, you know, meter free. I looked at that, although in their case, I thought this was interesting. In their case, the meters go back on at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So in addition to the cost per hour, there's also the times during the day when the meters are on. Now, the reason they do that is because they're trying to incentivize families to come in for movie night but they don't want to give anything away to the people coming late at night for the bars, and so the meter goes back on. And that suggests to me that that we have to figure out what our goal is and then match it with that. I mean, every community is not going to be the same, but they clearly had a goal in mind and they set the rates accordingly, and that's what we would need to do. But it wouldn't take much. I could work with Evan to sort of complete that exercise of comparison.
Well, I think the exercise in comparison would be interesting, but I think we could or should probably develop our own formula for what our parking fees need to be. Again, we know how much it costs annually to maintain the restrooms with full attendance in every restroom. We don't yet have a full picture of the maintenance program and costs for the boardwalk, and we probably should, so that we know on an annual basis how much do we want to be putting in there and how much should we try to be getting back from our visitors that are utilizing it and putting the wear and tear on the boardwalk, et cetera. So where are we? Susan, yeah, if you would do that research, that would be fine. Evan, remind us when is the latest you want us to have this information, act on pricing and fees and.
I think as soon as possible, Mayor. Certainly, February would be great. I would say that in terms of just general support for the parking meters themselves, I think traditionally what we've done is just received authorization from the commissioners to go ahead and move forward with purchasing those so that we can go ahead and receive them and get them in place before the start of the summer season. So I would defer to Sharon in terms of when she'd like to do that. I'm certainly happy to continue discussions about Deauville Beach. It is a change down there to put meters there and sell the permits from the meters. It's a change to kind of take that opportunity away where if somebody has a seasonal permit, they can park down there. Just want to continue the discussion, Mayor, and as soon as possible would be great.
Well, I know that we talked about this morning, the deadline at the end of January for the Chamber of Commerce to put stuff in. And I know that before we missed their deadline and they end up putting an extra sheet of paper in there to help them out. Yeah, I don't see that we can get all this or any of those resolved by the end of January. In other words, at the next voting meeting after today, I don't know that we can get those resolved, but I can see resolving all of them by the February regular meeting, if that works for you, Evan. And then as far as the parking meters, yes, I recall that last year the commissioners authorized the city manager to go ahead and order the extra meters so that they'd be in time and installed in time for summertime. And I would be comfortable in trying to get the commissioners to similarly authorize that. So we haven't really resolved the parking fee thing, Commissioner Bennett, but if Susan does her thing and brings that back to a February workshop and everybody else brings their thoughts to the February workshop, so that we can resolve it by the February regular meeting. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just did a quick scan, and Lewis is $1 in town per hour and $2 at the beach. And Dewey has a fee structure that's all over the place, depending upon permits, but about $2.50 an hour. But I just think we're very different. We have a boardwalk. We're kind of we're the main attraction here. And so I'm not so sure that Dewey and Lewis are fair comparisons. In talking to people, I think we get a lot of people from both of those locations coming to our beaches and our boardwalk. So I'm not so sure we need to be in line with Lewis and Dewey, but that's up to the rest of you.
Well, either now or February, it would be handy to have some actual proposals on paper to put in front of us.
Okay.
So we go that route, or does anybody want to throw out something now?
I'm fine with that, but a quick question, just to confirm, Sharon or Evan, you've not proposed any changes in this budget that we're looking at, correct?
That's correct.
Now,
Parking fees.
Yeah, any revenue, parking revenue changes, you've not proposed anything included in this budget.
that's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Evan, point of reference, how many parking spaces are there at Deauville?
Oh, over 100.
Okay,
I want to say, yeah, I could give you a number off the top of my head, but I'd rather not.
that's fine. Thank you.
I think when we were addressing the Deauville Beach parking lot before, the biggest complaints I got were mostly from those outside the city that target Deauville Beach. And they were against the program that we adopted. They wanted to keep it a separate permit and a higher fee so that it reduced the number of people populating their beach.
Air Beach.
So I guess I'd like to see us give a little more thought to what the changes might be in fee structures for permits and parking, and bring those forward at the February meeting. And Susan, if you would do your homework regardless, and let's find out, for instance, what Bethany Beach does or something. Just
And I think I also want to look at some, more to Tim's point about the popularity of Rehoboth compared to some of the other local towns. I think I should look at places like Cape May that, people gravitate to as a comparison, not just the local ones here, because we are the largest. I mean, Lewis is larger in area and population, but not otherwise. So,
well, I think Jay will attest. He and I toured 19 boardwalks town twice over a decade period. And the interesting thing I recall, Jay, is that you need to look at each New Jersey town, the 19 that we went to, and look at those that have beach tags. Because those that have beach tags, by my recollection, have super cheap parking fees, as low as $0.25 an hour, 50 cents an hour. But that's in conjunction with the beach fees, gain them enough revenue. And there are some towns like, I think, Wildwood, that does not have beach fees. So they would have higher parking fees. So it's kind of an interesting, so if you research them, you need to find out, do they indeed also charge have a beach fee?
Evan, can you remind, what's our permit fee structure now? I know you said the Deauville one, but for otherwise.
Sure. Let me just pull it up real quick so I can. I do know the weekday permit is $15. The weekend permit is $20. We have a 3-day weekend. And are you referring to just the permitted area itself or just Deauville Beach?
Oh, no, everything.
Everything. So the 3-day weekend, that can be either Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday, is $45. The weekly permit, that's 8 consecutive days. That goes back to the meeting from this morning. That's $90. And then we have the non-transferable permit, the sticker, that's $225. And then the transferable permit, the hang tag, at $250.
I'll tell you, for my homework, what I'd like to see sooner than later, so we can give it some thought, is the current permit structure, just like you read out. I'd like to see a parking map with all the parking fee areas designated. And I'd also like to review the current code on who gets how many parking permits, period. Does a residential rental license get one? We already talked about that today. Do businesses, what do they get? Do property owners get them? And let's look at the whole package. That's something you can send out, Evan.
Sure.
Would that be helpful? Is there any other research anybody would like?
Evan, excuse me, do you think that Park Mobile would be a resource to check out parking meters at other beach towns with boardwalks type of thing? If they may have all that information already in their database.
Yeah, I'll have to I can reach out to them certainly and ask. I don't know about disclosure of other information, whether or not we have to, sign any paperwork
Sure.
or anything like that. But yeah, I can certainly reach out to them and ask if that's something they could provide.
Does this all conform with what you'd like, Commissioner Bennett? Are you fine with this direction?
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. I think as we discussed this morning as well, that any ideas we have, if we forward them to Evan before the next meeting, then we can discuss it then.
Sounds good. Anything else on parking for Evan or Sharon or between ourselves? Seeing no other hands, Sharon, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you, Evan. Good
Yeah,
job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've covered all of the topics today that I wanted to include in the first budget discussion. Does anyone have any questions?
You've also got on there administration. Does anybody want to target specifically the administrative expenses and oh, hearing none, we might get out before 5, huh?
Mayor, we can always go back to, certainly to anything. I know that, we try to get this out to you and the commissioners, at least a week ahead of time. We did that so you'd have a chance to review, but I just think it's important to keep it on track. So today we kicked it off, and then the next time at the regular meeting day, we can discuss the next level of budgets.
Well, let's remind everybody in the public what that is. Our next budget meeting, budget number.
Adjusted, but because the year-to-date actual is 150,000. And I can't tell you what the cycle of each maintenance contract is, but I'm looking at the actual for 2020, and I think that's a number that probably needs to be revised upward.
Okay. And that's fine. And then for professional services, that's jumping quite a bit, from 75,000 to 236,000.
Well, there were two big items in there. There was 156,000 for the JMT ADA, and then there was another 30,000 that was parking related. Maybe I'm not. Those were my notes in the text box that I had made, but those are the items. Now that 30,000 for parking, I would assume what that involves is services from Parkion or the new company that purchased Parkion.
Kurt, I can clarify that $30,000. That was an estimate in there for number of parking spaces. We have that in there as a placeholder if that should, come to fruition. So I know that's something that Mayor Mills was interested in looking at for several years. So we did include that in the budget.
I get, if I could jump in, I can speak a little bit to the 156,000 for ADA services. So we have actually been back and forth with JMT. They have been a tremendous resource for us lately as it relates to accessible parking. So one of the things that we had done with them was try to look for a scope of work that included a broad range of services that we really think we need within the upcoming fiscal year. Those services include evaluating DelDOT's pedestrian accessibility guidelines. So traditionally, accessible parking has been looked at as a parking lot. Really, there's been guidelines on parking lots, not as much on the public right-of-way, so on public streets. So there's been guidelines published to address facilities in the public right of way. So really, their assistance is going to help us identify, how we implement something like that here in the city of Rehoboth Beach. There's also some dedicated time in there towards an ADA transition plan, updating that transition plan, looking at it a little bit more holistically. Traditionally, we've looked at mostly curb ramps, sidewalks, things like that. And then finally is just general on-call services. So in the event that we need to get on the phone with somebody who's a qualified Title II coordinator, we can do that. So that scope is pretty significant in cost, but it covers a broad range of services that we think is certainly needed.
Evan, is that a retainer? Is that going to be actual cost, or are we paying them by the hour or per service?
I think most of the services in there would be actual cost. There is a small sort of retainer fee, mostly that on-call work that could be subject to how often we're in touch with them. But I think a majority of the cost relates specifically to the pedestrian accessibility for the public rights of way, and then also the ADA services. So again, it depends on the on-call services, how much we utilize them within the upcoming year.
Commissioner Gossett?
Just two questions. I noticed on legal services, you dropped it about $30,000. Is that based just on actuals, based on 2020?
That's based on hope, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, it's based on where we are now and where we hopefully project to be. I think many of the legal services have it's hard to say, but again, we're projecting that they won't be as high as in past years.
And then also at the almost bottom of the page, contingency, I noticed it has decreased as opposed to the budget from last year. Is that just sort of kind of a placeholder?
Well, that contingency kind of balances out, and that's the amount of funding that when Bert pushes the button that we're able to have in reserves there in case it's needed. So I like to usually have a little more than that, but we'll see how this plays out. And I think that's a good average number for right now.
That was a decrease of 150,000. Ultimately, I'd love to see that higher, and maybe it will in the end. Commissioner Gossett, anything else?
That's all. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else? Nobody else is identified. Sharon, do you want to have any closing statements or?
Well, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for sitting through this. And, this is a work in progress as we move through to adoption during your regular meeting in March. It takes a lot to get all this together. We start doing this the end of November, and we'll continue doing this. So it's certainly a big piece of our everyday work with everything else that we do. So I thank the department heads and especially Mr. Dukes and Evan and Kevin for sitting through many, many meetings, trying to get this ironed out, and to the department heads today who took place in this. Next time we'll deal with, we'll talk about public works and additionally go into the CIP.
Sharon, it does say our next meeting Friday, the 22nd of January, and actually it's the 21st of January. So nobody shows up on Saturday.
Okay.
But would you expect that there are going to be any changes to this, or are we going to work from this document next time?
As of right now, there won't be any changes, but stand by because Mr. Dukes is constantly looking at that monitor screen, and I would never say no. So
All righty.
we'll
All right.
look at any changes.
Very good. Good in
I'm
order.
anticipating changes. I think to really do the job right, there are a lot of parts here that we're going to have to look at. And after the police negotiations, your wages are going to change. There's going to be so many different pieces that it won't take long. I mean, the template has been set. so that as we make these changes, it's not going to consume the amount of time that it took to set it up for this first meeting.
Sharon, when do you expect negotiations with the police to come to a conclusion?
Well, I certainly hope prior to the adoption of the budget, Mayor. So I'd be very happy by the end of February.
Very good. If there's nothing else by the commissioners, I want to thank everybody today for being here. Again, we had no members of the public sign up other than Walter, who apparently didn't come on board. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 4:25 p.m. today. Thank you very much.